Sir! 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 No, no, no! Don't close your eyes. Stay with me.
An 18-year-old black girl is kneeling on the scorching concrete of a Memphis park, hands shaking, voice cracking. Her stomach hasn't had food since yesterday morning.
Just open your mouth, just a little.
The old white man slumped on the bench can barely breathe. His skin is gray. His lips are split dry. He's slipping. She pulls a napkin from her pocket. One slice of bread, the last piece of food in her entire house. She tears off a small piece and presses it to his lips. His eyes flutter open, barely.
Why? Why are you helping me?
Because nobody else is here, sir. And I'm not leaving.
She didn't know it yet, but that one small act, that one slice of bread, was about to change everything she'd ever known. But before any of that happened, before the limousine, before the stranger, before everything changed, you need to understand just how little Layla Wilson had, and how much she still managed to give. South Memphis, Tennessee, late July. If you've never been to this part of the city, let me paint it for you. Half the houses on the block are boarded up. The sidewalks are cracked so deep that weeds grow through them like little green fists punching up from the ground. The streetlights flicker on and off like they can't decide whether this neighborhood is worth lighting up anymore. The ice cream truck stopped coming years ago. Layla Wilson lives on this block, has lived here her whole life. A sagging shotgun house with chipped white paint, a porch that groans every time you step on it, and a screen door that hasn't latched properly since 2019. She lives with her grandmother, Opal Wilson, 71 years old. Hands that have worked every day of their life, sorting donations at the local Goodwill warehouse, scrubbing church floors on Saturdays, folding other people's clothes so her granddaughter could have a roof over her head. Opal raised Layla since she was 3. Layla's mother passed when Layla was barely old enough to remember her face. Complications from untreated diabetes. No insurance. No money for the medication that might have saved her. She was 31. Layla's father left 6 months later. No note, no phone call, just gone. So it was Opal. It was always Opal, but Opal's knees were giving out. Some mornings she couldn't even stand without gripping the edge of the bed. She'd been missing shifts at Goodwill, 1 week, 2 weeks, and every missed shift meant another bill that didn't get paid. On the refrigerator in their kitchen, held up by a little magnet shaped like a cross, was a disconnection notice from the electric company. 14 days to pay. The paper was already 10 days old. And the refrigerator behind that notice? Almost empty. A half-used bottle of ketchup, some baking soda, a few condiment packets from fast food restaurants that Layla had saved. That was it. But here's the thing about Layla Wilson, and this is important. She never complained. Not once. Every single morning, Layla would get up before her grandmother. She'd walk into that bare kitchen, open the bread bag, and make 2 slices, one for herself, one for Opal. Sometimes with a thin layer of peanut butter, sometimes with just margarine, sometimes with nothing at all. She'd wrap Opal's slice in a paper towel, set it on the nightstand beside her grandmother's bed, and leave for school without making a sound. That was their ritual. Unspoken. Sacred. Layla was 18 now. A senior at Westwood High, quiet, observant, the kind of girl who held the door for strangers and never expected a thank you. The kind who noticed when a classmate didn't have lunch and would slide half of hers across the table without saying a word. Her school counselor, Desmond Cole, once told Opal at a parent-teacher meeting, "Mrs. Wilson, your granddaughter has more empathy in her little finger than most adults I've ever met." Opal just smiled. That's how we raised her. But Layla had a secret world, too. She carried a small sketchbook everywhere, tucked into her backpack, pulled out on the bus, opened during lunch. She drew portraits of people in the neighborhood, the man who sold fruit from a cooler on the corner, the woman who sat on her porch every evening and sang hymns to nobody in particular, the kids who played basketball with a milk crate nailed to a telephone pole. She drew them all, carefully, lovingly, like she was saying, "I see you, you matter." And in the back of that sketchbook, on a page she never showed anyone, she drew something else. Dream versions of her life. A house with a garden, a kitchen with a full fruit bowl, Grandma Opal sitting in a rocking chair smiling, not wincing. And at the bottom of the page, a quote she'd copied from the church bulletin board. "The Lord sees what is done in secret." Because Layla had a dream. She wanted to be an architect, someone who builds things. Not just buildings, but spaces that make people feel safe, feel seen, feel like they belong. She didn't talk about it much. Dreams feel fragile when you're not sure where your next meal is coming from. But she held on to it, quietly, the way you hold a candle in the wind, cupping your hands around the flame so it doesn't go out. Every Saturday, Layla volunteered at the food pantry run by Pastor Elaine Briggs at their neighborhood church. She stacked cans, sorted bags, carried boxes for elderly neighbors who couldn't lift them. And here's the part that gets me. Layla qualified to receive food from that pantry. She and Opal both did. But she never took a single bag. Pastor Briggs asked her once, "Sweetheart, you know this is for you too, right?" Layla just shook her head. Other people need it worse. 18 years old, empty fridge at home, and she said other people need it worse. On her walk to the pantry, Layla always passed through Douglas Park, a small, tired park with a neglected pond and a row of old benches. She liked to sit on one particular bench and sketch the water. She never paid attention to the small brass plaque on the backrest. It was faded, half hidden under peeling green paint. If she had looked closely, she would have read, "Donated by the Hargrove Foundation, 1988. But she didn't. Not yet. And that bench, that quiet, forgotten little bench, was about to become the most important place in her life. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Layla saw him, and something about the way he was sitting told her this wasn't someone resting. This was someone giving up. But let me back up a little. That morning started like every other morning in the Wilson house, except worse. Opal had a rough night, coughing, joints swollen. She barely slept. When Layla came into the kitchen, she found her grandmother already sitting at the table, hunched over, rubbing her knees with both hands. "Morning, Grandma. I'll make your bread." Opal shook her head. "I'm not hungry, baby. You eat." She was lying. Layla knew it. Opal always said she wasn't hungry when there wasn't enough. It was her way of making sure Layla ate. Layla opened the bread bag. 2 slices left, the last 2. She stood there for a moment, staring at them. Then she made 1 slice with the last scraping of peanut butter, pressed the knife so hard against the jar that it squeaked, and wrapped it in a napkin for Opal's nightstand. The second slice, plain, she folded into another napkin and tucked it into her pocket. "For later," she told herself. But there was no later. There was nothing else, no backup, no emergency stash. After this, the bread bag was empty. The pantry was empty. The fridge was empty. That was it. Schools were out for summer, so Layla didn't have anywhere to be. She thought about going to the corner store to see if Mr. Tatum needed help sweeping. He sometimes paid her a few dollars. But it was too early. The store didn't open until noon. So she grabbed her sketchbook and walked to Douglas Park. Late July in Memphis is brutal. 95 degrees by midday. The air so thick and heavy it feels like breathing through a wet towel. The kind of heat that makes the pavement shimmer. The kind that kills people every summer. Mostly the elderly, mostly the poor, mostly the ones nobody checks on. Layla walked a familiar path through the park, past the rusted swing set, past the pond with its greenish water, toward her bench. But someone was already there. An old man, white, gaunt, slumped sideways against the armrest like he'd been placed there and forgotten. His skin was pale, not just light, but pale. The kind of pale that means something is wrong. A thin line of sweat ran down his temple, even though he was wearing a wool cardigan in the middle of July. A wool cardigan, in 95-degree heat. His eyes were half closed. His breathing was shallow. Quick, uneven little gasps that didn't sound like enough. A wooden walking cane lay on the ground beside the bench, fallen like it had slipped from his hand. Layla stopped walking. Her first instinct was fear. She was an 18-year-old black girl, alone in a park, and this was a stranger, an old white man she'd never seen before. Everything in her told her to keep moving. Mind your business. Don't get involved. But then she heard it. A sound. Low, rattling, like air being dragged through a throat that didn't want to let it pass. And fear turned into something else. She stepped closer, slowly, her sneakers crunching on the dry grass. "Sir! Sir, are you okay?" No response, just that terrible breathing. She knelt down beside the bench. His face was right there, close enough to see the deep lines around his eyes, the cracked lips, the way his jaw was slack. His hand was trembling on his knee, not shaking from cold, trembling from weakness. And then she noticed something. His wallet was lying open on the bench beside him. No cash inside, just a faded photograph, a woman with kind eyes, and a business card face down half tucked under his leg. Layla didn't touch it, didn't even think about it. But she noticed something else, too. Something that didn't quite fit. His shoes. They were leather Oxfords, dark brown, scuffed and dusty from walking, but the stitching was fine. The soles were thick. These weren't shoes from Goodwill. These were shoes that cost more than Opal's monthly rent. And the cardigan, the one that made no sense in this heat, had a small monogram stitched into the left cuff. 2 letters. She couldn't read them from where she was kneeling. She didn't try. None of it mattered right now. What mattered was that this man was in trouble. Serious trouble. His skin was hot to the touch. His breathing was getting slower. She'd seen these signs before. Pastor Briggs taught a first aid session at church last summer. Heat stroke, dehydration, maybe worse. She needed to cool him down. She needed to get him water. She needed to do something. But she had no phone, no water bottle, no money, nothing. Nothing except a single slice of plain bread in her pocket. Her stomach growled, a long, low sound she couldn't hide. She looked at the bread. She looked at the man. And what Layla did next would cost her the only meal she had left. She didn't think. She just moved. Layla jumped to her feet and ran toward the park's water fountain, the old one near the swing set, the one that barely worked. She pressed the button. A thin, pathetic trickle of warm water sputtered out. She cupped her hands underneath it. Waited. The water filled her palms slowly, so slowly. And then she turned and ran back to the bench. Half the water spilled before she got there. It leaked through her fingers, dripped down her wrists, left a trail of dark spots on the dry concrete behind her. But she made it. She knelt beside him and pressed her wet hands to his forehead, then his neck, then his cheeks. "Stay with me, sir, please. I'm right here." She ran back to the fountain, cupped more water, ran back. This time she let it drip onto his lips, slowly, carefully, the way you water a plant that's almost dead. Not too much, not too fast. His lips moved, just barely. She did it again. A third trip, a fourth. Each time losing water, each time bringing back less, each time pressing what little she had against his skin. By the fourth trip, her legs were shaking. The heat was pressing down on her too. She hadn't eaten. She hadn't had water herself. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. Then she reached into her pocket. The napkin was damp with sweat. She unfolded it carefully. The slice of bread, plain, no peanut butter, slightly squished from being carried all morning, sat in her palm. She looked at it. This was it. The last food in her house. The last thing between her and nothing. If she gave this away, she'd go home to an empty kitchen, an empty fridge, and a grandmother who was pretending not to be hungry so Layla could eat. Her stomach growled again, louder this time, almost angry. She tore off a small piece of bread and pressed it gently to the old man's lips. "Here, eat this. It's okay, just a little bit." His mouth opened, barely. She placed the piece on his tongue. He chewed, weak, slow, like even his jaw didn't have the strength anymore. She tore another piece, then another, feeding him slowly, patiently, the way Grandma Opal fed the birds on their porch every Sunday. Pinch by pinch, no rush, just care. That's it, just like that. You're doing good, sir. Piece by piece. The bread disappeared. All of it. Every crumb. Layla wiped her hands on her jeans. Her stomach was screaming now, but her face was calm, like this was the most natural thing in the world, like she hadn't just given away her last meal to a man she'd never met. And then, his eyes opened. Not halfway, not fluttering, fully open. And Layla saw something she didn't expect. His eyes were ice blue, sharp, clear, startlingly alert, like a light switching on behind frosted glass. These were not the eyes of a confused old man. These were the eyes of someone who was paying very, very close attention. He looked at her, really looked at her, and his voice came out low and rough but steady. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. That was your food. You needed it more. He stared at her for a long moment, like he was trying to understand something, like he was solving a problem he hadn't expected to encounter. What's your name? Layla Wilson. He repeated it quietly. Layla Wilson. Like he was writing it down inside his mind. She pulled her outer shirt off, just a loose flannel she wore over her tank top, and jogged to the fountain one more time. She soaked it under the trickle, wrung it halfway, and came back. She draped it across his shoulders. Then she sat down beside him on the bench and started fanning him with her sketchbook. Back and forth, slow and steady. They sat there for over an hour. Layla talked to keep him conscious. She told him about Grandma Opal, how she makes the best sweet potato pie in Memphis, but won't share the recipe with anyone, not even Pastor Briggs. She told him about the pond, how it used to have fish in it when she was little, but they all disappeared one summer. She told him about her drawings. You draw? His voice was getting stronger now. Yes, sir, mostly people. What else? Buildings, houses, things I want to build someday. You want to be a builder? An architect. Someone who designs spaces that make people feel safe. He went quiet when she said that. Real quiet. He turned his head and looked at her, that same sharp blue stare, and said almost to himself, an architect. As the hour passed, his color came back. His breathing steadied. He sat up straighter, and he started asking questions, not the polite throwaway kind, precise questions, specific. You live around here, Layla? Yes, sir. Few blocks that way. Who takes care of you? My grandma. Just the two of you? Yes, sir. You go to school? Westwood High. I'm a senior this fall. What do you want to do after that? I told you, I want to build things. He nodded slowly, like he was checking boxes on a list she couldn't see. The sun was starting its long slide toward the tree line when Layla finally stood up. Sir, I should call 911. Let me find someone with a phone. He raised a hand, gently. No, someone's coming for me. I just wandered farther than I should have today. Layla hesitated. She didn't want to leave him alone. Go home, Layla Wilson. Your grandmother's probably wondering where you are. He paused, then softer. Thank you. For the bread. She picked up her sketchbook, brushed off her jeans, looked at him one more time. You sure you're going to be okay? I'm sure. She nodded, and she walked away, slowly, her stomach hollow, her heart full. She didn't look back, but if she had, she would have seen his face change. The weakness was gone, the helplessness, gone. His jaw was set. His eyes were locked on her until she turned the corner and disappeared. 30 seconds later, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. A uniformed chauffeur, Ray Sullivan, rushed out and ran to the bench. Mr. Hargrove, we've been looking for you everywhere. The old man raised a hand, calm, steady. I'm fine, Ray. A pause. But I need you to find out everything about a girl named Layla Wilson. Everything. By tonight. Layla went home that evening and told Grandma Opal she wasn't hungry. It was the second lie she'd told that week, and the most generous one. Opal was sitting at the kitchen table when Layla walked in. A shoebox full of medical bills sat open in front of her. Envelopes with red stamps, final notices, collection agency letters. Opal's reading glasses were low on her nose. Her hands were still. She looked tired. Not regular tired. The kind of tired that lives in your bones. "Where you been, baby?" "The park. Drawing." "You eat?" "Yes, ma'am."
Opal studied her for a moment.
Grandmothers have a way of knowing when you're lying, but Opal didn't push. Maybe she didn't have the energy. Maybe she already knew. Layla boiled water on the stove and dropped in a tea bag that had already been used twice. The water turned a faint, pale brown, barely tea at all. She set a cup in front of Opal and sat across from her. "I met someone at the park today, Grandma." "Who?" "An old man, white man. He was real sick. I think he had heat stroke or something. I stayed with him for a while." Opal looked up. "By yourself?" "Yes, ma'am. There was nobody else around. He couldn't even talk at first." "What did you do?" "I gave him some water, fanned him with my sketchbook, gave him—" She paused. "Gave him something to eat." Opal didn't ask what. She didn't need to. She knew what was in the bread bag this morning. She knew what wasn't in it tonight. She reached across the table and placed her hand over Layla's. "You did right, baby, you hear me? You did right." They sat in the quiet kitchen. The refrigerator hummed. The disconnection notice fluttered under the cross-shaped magnet, and neither of them mentioned dinner. The next morning, day 2, Layla woke up early. Habit. Her body didn't know there was no bread to prepare. She stepped onto the porch to shake out the doormat and stopped. A small envelope was tucked underneath it. White. No stamp, no return address, just her name, Layla, written in careful, old-fashioned handwriting on the front. She opened it. Inside was a $100 bill, crisp, new, and a handwritten note on thick, cream-colored stationery. "For the girl who shared her bread, E.H." Layla's hands trembled. She flipped the note over. Nothing else. She held the $100 bill up to the morning light like it might disappear. Then she walked inside and showed Opal. Her grandmother's eyes went wide. She touched the stationery with her fingertips, running her thumb across the paper. It was heavy. Expensive. The kind of paper that comes from a desk, not a store. "Who's E.H.?" Opal whispered. "I don't know, Grandma. Maybe the man from the park." Opal held the note for a long time, but she said nothing. "Now, listen to me. $100 to Layla Wilson was a fortune. That was groceries for 2 weeks. That was half the electric bill. That was survival. And you know what she did with it? She walked it straight to Pastor Elaine Briggs at the church, and she handed it over. "Put it in the food pantry, Pastor Briggs." The pastor stared at her. "Sweetheart, you need this more than anyone in this room."
Layla shook her head.
"Somebody gave it to me because I helped, so I should keep helping." Pastor Briggs's eyes filled with tears. She pulled Layla into a hug and held her tight. Over Layla's shoulder, the pastor looked down at the stationery in her hand. Her thumb brushed across something at the top, an embossed letter. A small, elegant H inside a geometric crest. Her brow furrowed, just for a second, like she recognized it from somewhere. But she didn't say a word. And Layla walked home, still broke, still hungry, and completely at peace with it. But the envelopes weren't done. That same evening, day 2, Layla found a second envelope on the porch. This one was different. No cash inside. Instead, a slim, black box. She opened it and her breath caught. A set of professional-grade drawing pencils. 12 of them, perfectly sharpened. The kind she'd only ever seen behind glass at the art supply store downtown. The store she walked past but never walked into because everything in it cost more than she made in a month. And underneath the pencils, a sketch pad. Thick, heavy pages. Archival quality paper. The kind real architects use. The note read, "For the architect, E.H." Layla's skin went cold. She hadn't told anyone about wanting to be an architect. Not Pastor Briggs, not Desmond Cole, not a single friend. The only person she'd said those words to, the only one, was the old man on the bench. She sat on the porch steps and stared at the pencils for a long time. The evening air was warm and heavy. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. A screen door slammed. "Grandma," she called softly, "come look at this." Opal came to the door, saw the pencils, read the note. And this time, she didn't smile. Her face tightened. "Who is this person, Layla?" "I don't know." "How does he know what you want to be?" "I told him, at the park. We were just talking." Opal stood in the doorway for a long time, arms crossed, lips pressed together, grateful but uneasy, like someone was watching her family, and she couldn't tell yet whether that was a blessing or a threat. Day 3, morning. Layla walked to the corner store to see if Mr. Tatum needed help. On her way, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. A black SUV parked across the street from her house. Tinted windows. Engine off. It wasn't there yesterday. She slowed down, looked at it, looked away, kept walking. At the park, she went straight to her bench. The old man wasn't there, but something was different. The bench had been cleaned, freshly painted. The old peeling green was gone, replaced by smooth, dark wood. And the brass plaque on the backrest was polished, gleaming, like someone had spent an hour bringing it back to life. Layla knelt down and read it for the first time. Donated by the Hargrove Foundation, 1988. Hargrove. She traced the word with her finger. It meant nothing to her, but right about now, it should mean everything to you. Because somewhere across town, a phone was ringing in Desmond Cole's office, and the person on the other end was asking about Layla Wilson's academic records. Day 3, 2:47 in the afternoon, and a black limousine turned onto Layla's street. Now, you have to understand what this looked like. This is South Memphis. Potholes deep enough to lose a shoe in. Chain-link fences with weeds growing through them. A block where the fanciest car is a 2009 Camry with a cracked windshield. And here comes this thing. Long, black, polished so clean you could see the clouds reflected in the hood. It moved slow, real slow, like it was looking for something. Like it knew exactly where it was going, but wanted the whole street to see it arrive. Kids on bikes stopped pedaling, just froze in the middle of the road with their mouths open. Ms. Henderson across the street was watering her flower bed. She dropped the hose. Didn't even pick it up. Water just running across the sidewalk while she stood there staring. Two men sitting on a porch down the block lowered their dominoes and leaned forward. Nobody said a word. The whole street just held its breath. The limousine stopped, right in front of the Wilson house. For a moment, nothing happened. The engine idled. The tinted windows gave away nothing. Then the driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Tall, broad shoulders, crisp gray suit. Ray Sullivan. He walked to the rear passenger door, adjusted his jacket, and opened it. And the man who stepped out made Layla's knees go weak. He was tall, straight-backed, clean-shaven. His white hair was combed neatly to the side. He wore a tailored navy suit, the kind that doesn't come off a rack, the kind that's built for you by someone who knows your name. A silk tie, a pocket square, and in his right hand, a polished wooden cane with a silver handle. He wasn't leaning on it, he was carrying it, like a gentleman, like a man who owned the ground he walked on. His eyes were ice blue, sharp, unmistakable. Layla was inside when she heard the car doors. She came to the window, looked out through the curtain, and her whole body went still. "Grandma," she whispered. "Grandma, come here." Opal shuffled to the window. She looked out. She saw the limousine. She saw the man in the navy suit walking toward their porch. She saw the cane, and the silver handle caught the sunlight, and something on it flashed. A crest, a small letter H inside a geometric shape, the same H that was embossed on the stationery. Opal's hand went to her mouth. She knew that name. Not personally, but the way everyone in Memphis knew it. Edmund Hargrove. The man who built half the commercial district downtown. The man who funded the children's hospital wing. The man whose foundation had a plaque on every park bench, every library wall, every community building in the city. The man who disappeared from public life 5 years ago, after his wife died, after he stopped showing up to board meetings, after he stopped showing up to anything. Edmund Hargrove, 82 years old, founder and chairman emeritus of Hargrove Enterprises. Net worth, $4.2 billion. And 3 days ago, he was slumped on a bench in Douglas Park, barely breathing, while an 18-year-old girl with an empty stomach fed him her last slice of bread. He had wandered 6 miles in the July heat that day. No phone, no water. He'd walked away from his driver, again, the way he'd been doing for months. Aimless, purposeless, walking through the same neighborhoods his company had once promised to revitalize but never did. He was ready to give up, not just that day, on everything. And then Layla Wilson knelt beside him and said, "I'm not leaving." Opal opened the screen door. Her hands were shaking. The man on her porch looked nothing like the figure Layla had described, the sick, helpless old man on the bench. This man radiated power, wealth, authority. But those eyes, Layla would know those eyes anywhere. She stepped past her grandmother and stood on the porch. "That's him," she said quietly. "That's the man from the bench." Edmund Hargrove looked at her, and he smiled. Not a polite smile, not a formal one, a real smile, the kind that starts in the eyes and takes over the whole face. "Hello, Layla." His voice was different now, strong, full, nothing like the cracked whisper from the park. How did you find me?" Layla asked. "You told me your name. That was enough." Opal gripped the doorframe. You're Edmund Hargrove." "Yes, ma'am, and I owe your granddaughter my life." A second figure stepped out of the limousine. A woman, mid-50s, polished, tailored charcoal suit, leather portfolio tucked under one arm. Her posture was straight, her expression warm but focused, the kind of face that runs boardrooms and doesn't waste time. Nora Hargrove, Edmund's daughter, the current CEO of Hargrove Enterprises. She walked up the porch steps and extended her hand to Opal. "Mrs. Wilson, my name is Nora Hargrove. I'm Edmund's daughter." She paused. "May we come inside? We have something we'd like to discuss with you and Layla." Opal looked at the outstretched hand, looked at the limousine, looked at her granddaughter. Then she opened the screen door, the one that doesn't latch, the one that groans on its hinges, and stepped aside. "Come in," she said softly. "Forgive the house, we weren't expecting company." Edmund stepped across the threshold. His blue eyes moved across the small kitchen, the empty fridge, the shoebox of bills, the disconnection notice under the cross-shaped magnet. He saw everything, and his jaw tightened. Nora Hargrove didn't come with a check. She came with a blueprint. The 4 of them sat at the Wilsons' kitchen table. It was a small table, barely big enough for 2, now holding 4. Opal had apologized 3 times for not having anything to offer them. Edmund waved her off each time. "Mrs. Wilson, please, sit down. We're the ones who should be thanking you." Nora placed the leather portfolio on the table and unzipped it. Inside were printed documents, architectural renderings on heavy paper, and a letter on Hargrove Enterprises' letterhead, the same H crest that had been following Layla for 3 days. "Layla," Nora began. Her voice was calm, professional, but underneath it, something softer, something personal. "My father told me what you did for him in the park. He told me everything, the water, the bread, the hour you spent keeping him conscious." She paused. "He also told me what you said, that you want to be an architect." Layla nodded. Her hands were in her lap. She didn't know what to do with them. "He told me one more thing." Nora glanced at her father. "He told me that you took the $100 he sent you and gave it away, to a food pantry, the same day you received it." Silence in the kitchen. The refrigerator hummed. Edmund leaned forward. His blue eyes were locked on Layla. "I've built a company worth billions of dollars, Layla. I've met presidents, senators, CEOs, people who would step over a dying man to get to a meeting on time." His voice was low, steady. "And in 82 years of living, no one has ever done for me what you did on that bench." He placed his hand flat on the table. "So we're not here to say thank you. We're here to make sure that the kind of person you are gets the life she deserves. Nora opened the portfolio fully and turned it so Layla and Opal could see. There are 4 things we'd like to offer, and I want you to hear all of them before you respond. First, Layla's education. A full scholarship, not to just any school, to the Reynolds College of Architecture and Design. One of the top 5 architecture programs in the country. Full tuition, books, supplies, housing, transportation. Covered entirely through the Hargrove Foundation's Education Fund. 4 years, every cent paid. You told my father you want to build spaces that make people feel safe, Nora said. This is where you learn how. Layla's lips parted. No sound came out. Second, Opal's health. Comprehensive medical coverage. Immediate. Specialist appointments for her knees. The best orthopedic team in Memphis. A full prescription plan. And a home health aide twice a week to help with daily tasks. And every outstanding medical bill, Nora said, pulling a sheet from the portfolio. Every single one is paid, effective today. Opal's hand went to her chest. Her chin trembled. She tried to speak but couldn't. Third, the house. Hargrove Enterprises would purchase the Wilson home from the landlord. Full renovation. New roof, new wiring, new plumbing, new kitchen, new HVAC system. Everything gutted and rebuilt from the inside out. And when it was done, the deed would be transferred to Opal Wilson's name. Free and clear. No rent, no mortgage. Hers. This is your home, Mrs. Wilson, Edmund said quietly. It should feel like one. Opal couldn't hold it anymore. A tear slid down her cheek, then another. She gripped the edge of the table with both hands like the room was spinning. Layla reached over and took her grandmother's hand, held it tight. Fourth, and this was the one that changed everything. Edmund stood up. Slowly. He walked to the kitchen window and looked out at the street. The cracked pavement, the boarded-up house next door, the empty lot across the way. I walked through this neighborhood 3 days ago, Layla, and I saw something I should have seen years ago. He turned to face her. My company put a plaque on that park bench in 1988. We promised to invest in this community. We promised to revitalize it. His voice dropped. We didn't. That's on me. He returned to the table. Nora pulled out the architectural renderings, full-color plans for a community center, an after-school arts program, walking paths, new playground equipment, renovated housing. Hargrove Enterprises is committing $10 million to a South Memphis neighborhood revitalization fund, Edmund said. New community center, expanded food pantry, job training programs, housing improvements, all of it right here, in this neighborhood. He looked at Layla. And I want you to be the youth ambassador, the face of this program, the person who represents what this community really is, not what people assume it is. He leaned closer. You told me you wanted to build things that make people feel safe, so let's start here. Let's start with your own block. The kitchen was completely silent. Opal was crying freely now, not loud, not dramatic, just tears rolling down her face, steady and unstoppable. Layla sat perfectly still. Her eyes were wide, her lips were pressed together. Then she spoke, quietly, barely above a whisper. Can I still volunteer at the food pantry? Edmund Hargrove laughed, a real laugh, full, deep, the kind that starts in the belly and fills the whole room, the kind that his daughter hadn't heard in 5 years, not since her mother died. I'd be disappointed if you didn't, he said, and while Layla pulled the architectural renderings closer, already sketching suggestions on a napkin, already dreaming out loud, Nora leaned toward Opal. She spoke softly, just for the two of them. Mrs. Wilson, my father hasn't laughed like that since my mother passed. Your granddaughter didn't just save his life in that park. She paused. She reminded him why his life was worth saving. Opal squeezed Nora's hand, and for the first time in a very long time, she didn't feel tired. Within 6 months, you wouldn't recognize Layla's street, but more importantly, you wouldn't recognize Layla's smile. Let me show you what happened. September, fall semester. Layla Wilson walked through the gates of Reynolds College of Architecture and Design on the first day of classes. New backpack, new shoes, the professional sketch pad Edmund gave her tucked under her arm, already half full. She was nervous. You could see it in the way she held her shoulders, tight, high, like she was bracing for something. Most of the students around her came from prep schools and private academies. They had portfolios built by tutors. They had parents who were architects and engineers. Layla had a grandmother who sorted clothes at Goodwill and a sketchbook full of drawings made on a park bench. But she belonged. And it didn't take long for everyone to know it. Her first major project, a scale model of a community center designed for South Memphis. Open floor plan, natural light, a rooftop garden, spaces for art classes, tutoring, job training. Every detail thoughtful. Every corner designed to make someone feel welcome. Her professor held it up in front of the entire class. "This," he said, "is what architecture is supposed to do." On the wall of her dorm room, right above her desk, she hung a framed drawing, the one she'd made from memory at Douglas Park. An old man with ice blue eyes sitting on a bench. She looked at it every morning before class. Back in South Memphis, Opal Wilson was walking again. Not shuffling, not gripping furniture, walking. The knee replacement surgery happened in October. The best orthopedic team in Memphis, the kind of doctors Opal never imagined she'd sit in front of. 6 weeks of recovery, a physical therapist who came to the house 3 times a week. And one morning in December, Opal stood up from her kitchen chair and walked across the room without touching a single thing for balance. She stopped in the middle of the floor, looked down at her legs, and cried. The kitchen she was standing in, brand new. Granite countertops, a stove that actually worked on all 4 burners, a refrigerator, full, not half empty, not barely surviving, full. Milk, eggs, vegetables, fruit, leftovers in containers, magnets on the fridge door. But they weren't holding a disconnection notice anymore. They were holding Layla's college acceptance letter. The house itself, transformed. New roof, fresh paint, a soft blue that Layla picked out. New porch that didn't groan, a screen door that actually latched. A small garden out front that Opal planted herself. Tomatoes, collard greens, marigolds along the walkway. Neighbors walked by and stopped, stared. Not with jealousy, with something closer to hope. Like maybe if this house could change, maybe theirs could too. And they were right, because the $10 million revitalization fund was just getting started. Construction crews broke ground on the new community center in November. And here's what mattered. Most of the workers were hired from the neighborhood. Local hands building a local future. The center was designed with input from Layla herself. She'd submitted sketches to the Hargrove Foundation's architects during her first month at Reynolds. They used 3 of her ideas. 3 from a freshman. The name of the center, Layla insisted on this, the Opal Wilson Community Center. Opal protested. "You put your own name on it, baby." "No, ma'am. You built me. This one's yours." Douglas Park got new playground equipment, new walking paths, new lighting, benches, not just repaired, but added. The kind of park where families actually come now, where kids play until sunset, where old men sit and play chess on Saturday mornings. The story went public in January. Tanya Preston, a reporter from the local news station, ran a segment called "The Girl Who Shared Her Last Bread." 3 minutes long, simple. Just Layla, Opal, and Edmund sitting together in the renovated kitchen, telling the story in their own words. It went viral in 48 hours, shared over 2 million times. Donations poured in from strangers across the country, doubling the revitalization fund. A national morning show invited Layla for an interview. She brought Grandma Opal and Pastor Briggs. The 3 of them sat on that couch under the studio lights, and when Layla told the part about giving away the $100, the host had to pause the interview to collect herself. Pastor Briggs's food pantry, boosted by Hargrove funding and the flood of donations, expanded into a full community kitchen. Hot meals served 3 nights a week, volunteers from across the city. And every Saturday morning, without fail, Layla was there. stacking cans, sorting bags. Same as before. Some things don't change. The best things don't. And Edmund Hargrove? He came back to life. He started visiting South Memphis every week, playing chess in the park with retirees, sponsoring a summer art camp, and asking Layla to co-teach. His health improved. His appetite returned. His daughter Nora told a reporter something that made the whole country stop and think. A girl with nothing did what 5 years of therapy and medication couldn't. She gave my father a reason to wake up in the morning. 1 year later, Layla returned to the bench at Douglas Park. And this time, she wasn't alone. It was a Tuesday, late July. Same week, same heat, same Memphis sun pressing down on everything like a heavy hand. But the park was different now. The pond was clean. The grass was green. Actually green, not brown and brittle like before. Children were running through a new splash pad near the swing set, shrieking and laughing. A group of teenagers were painting a mural on the wall of the community center, the Opal Wilson Community Center, its doors wide open, music drifting out. Layla walked past all of it, past the new playground, past the walking path, past the families having picnics on blankets in the shade. She went straight to the bench. It had been restored. The wood was smooth and dark. The original brass plaque was still there, polished, gleaming. Donated by the Hargrove Foundation, 1988. But now there was a second plaque beneath it, smaller, newer, engraved in simple letters, where a piece of bread saved 2 lives, LW and EH. Layla sat down. She was carrying a brown paper bag. She set it on her lap and waited. 10 minutes later, she heard it. The slow tap of a cane on the walking path. Not heavy, not labored, just steady, familiar. Edmund Hargrove came around the bend. No limousine today, no suit, just khaki pants, a light blue shirt, and that same polished cane, though he barely needed it anymore. Ray Sullivan trailed 20 steps behind, hands clasped, respectful distance, smiling. Edmund sat down beside Layla. Neither of them spoke right away. They watched the pond, the sunlight on the water, the sound of kids laughing in the distance. Then Layla opened the brown paper bag. Inside, 2 slices of fresh bread, peanut butter. The good kind, not the last scraping from an almost empty jar. The kind you buy when your fridge is full and your grandmother is healthy and your life has space in it for small, beautiful things. She handed 1 slice to Edmund. He took it. They ate together, in silence, the way people do when words aren't necessary, when just being beside someone says everything. This had become their ritual. Once a month, bread on the bench. Sometimes they talked about architecture, sometimes about Opal, sometimes about Edmund's late wife. Sometimes they didn't talk at all. Then, a small voice. "Hey, mister?" They both looked up. A boy, maybe 8 years old, standing a few feet away, skinny, shorts too big for him, holding a granola bar in one hand. He was looking at Edmund, elderly, resting, cane at his side, with wide, serious eyes. "You want this? You look like you might need it." Edmund looked at Layla. Layla looked at the boy, and she smiled, the kind of smile that starts slow and takes over your whole face. Edmund took the granola bar, held it gently, like it was worth more than anything he'd ever been given. "Thank you, son. What's your name?" The boy told him, and just like that, quietly, simply, without fanfare, the circle began again. Wide shot, the park, the laughter, the mural half-finished on the community center wall, the pond catching the last golden light of the afternoon, and Layla Wilson, sitting on the bench where everything started, opening her sketchbook to a brand new page. You know, I've told a lot of stories on this channel. Stories about people who had nothing. Stories about people who had everything. Stories about what happens when those 2 worlds collide. But this one? This one stays with me. So if this story moved something in you, leave a like. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you're not subscribed yet, come be part of this. We tell stories here that remind you the world is still worth believing in. I'll see you in the next one.
So if you're still here, I need you to sit with this for a second, because this story isn't really about a billionaire and a limousine. Lena Wilson had nothing, one slice of bread. That was it, the last food in her entire house, and she gave it to a stranger on a bench. No cameras, no audience, no idea who he was. She just knew he was dying, and she said 3 words: "I'm not leaving." Edmund Hargrove, 82 years old, $4.2 billion to his name, said no one in his entire life had ever done for him what that girl did with a piece of plain bread, because it was never about the bread. It was about the kind of person who gives when they have every reason not to, who stays when it costs them something. That's the part money can't build, and that's the part that changed both their lives. And that leaves me with a question I can't shake. If generosity only counts when it's comfortable, is it really generosity? And if the person with the least to give gave the most, what does that say about the rest of us? What's your slice of bread? Drop it in the comments. I want to know. If this story moved you, leave a like, share it with someone who needs it today. And if you are not subscribed, come be a part of this. We tell stories that might remind you the world is still worth believing in. I'll see you in the next one.